The farmer looks over in the field, the sun starting to show its majestic glow over the horizon, and watches the cows graze. A smile crosses his face as he reflects he's making a living helping feed Michigan. Little did he know, one of the biggest cattle feed plants in Michigan is about to poison the entire state. I will be informing you guys about the PBB incident that happened in St. Louis, Michigan in 1973. This is an interesting topic because it still affects families around the entire state. In this speech, I will cover what actually happened in St. Louis in 1973, what the outcome was, what the Michigan Department Community of Health did about it, and finally, the lasting effects. The PBB crisis in St. Louis is a huge agricultural disaster that will forever impact the state of Michigan. In early 1973, both PBB, according to Dictionary.com, a fire retardant sold under the trade name Firemaster, and magnesium oxide, a cattle feed supplement sold under the trade name of Nutrimaster, were both produced at the same St. Louis, Michigan plant by the Michigan Chemical Company. A shortage of pre-printed paper bags containers led to 10 to 20 50-pound bags of PBB accidentally being sent to Michigan Farm Bureau Services in place of the Nutrimaster. This accident was not recognized until long after the bags had been shipped to feed mills and used in the production of feed for dairy cattle. By the time the mix-up was discovered in April 1974, PBB had entered the food chain through milk and other dairy products, beef products, and contaminated swine, sheep, chickens, and eggs. Now that you know what happened, let's get to the outcome. In the autumn of 1973, farmers were noticing odd things happening. According to Jay Moyer, a writer on Michigan Tales, milk production was dropping rapidly among their cows. There was many miscarriages for calves. Some calves that were born had deformities. Chicks were being hatched with their legs twisted and talons deformed where they couldn't stand up. The farmers were clueless on why this was happening over and over. Some of the farmers had agents of the Department of Agriculture come out to the farm to investigate. The farmers would brush them off, telling them it was because of bad husbandry. These were farmers who had been raising animals all their lives and grew up watching their fathers raise animals. The farmers knew what they were doing in raising these animals, yet it still did not explain what was suddenly happening. The farmers started to feel ashamed, thinking it was their doing, and didn't want to talk about it to neighbor farmers because they didn't want to appear as a failure. According to Michigan.gov, this eventually led to over 500 farms being quarantined. Michigan.gov also stated that 30,000 cattle, 4,500 swine, 1,500 sheep, and 1.5 million chickens were destroyed, along with over 800 tons of animal feed, 18,000 pounds of cheese, 2,500 pounds of butter, 5 million eggs, and 34,000 pounds of dried milk products. Now that you know the outcome, here's what the Michigan Department Community of Health did about it. Despite the brutal destruction of very large quantities of contaminated animals, dairy, and meat products, people throughout Michigan were potentially exposed through the consumption of these products. The Michigan Department Community of Health screened people from quarantine farms and found they had higher levels of PBB in their blood, but they didn't know if it would cause any immediate health effects. Although they never found out if PBB can cause cancer in humans, they did find out it causes cancer in rats and mice. According to Michelle Marcus, a professor of epidemiology, environmental health, and pediatrics at Emory University Schools of Public Health and Medicine, a study of 850 people in Michigan was taken and found that 85% of those people still had PBB in them. She says they're finding women with higher levels of PBB have an increased risk of breast cancer. Men who were highly exposed are more likely to have thyroid problems, and daughters of women with high levels of PBB are having their periods a year earlier. As those girls become adults, they have an increased risk of miscarriages. Jane Ann Nyerges was just 7 years old when the PBB mix-up happened. For at least a year, she ate contaminated beef. And even now, her PBB levels are higher than average, even now, 40 years later. I've had 10 miscarriages and 4 ectopic pregnancies over my adult life. Fortunately, I was able to have 1 child during that time, and she's a complete blessing to me. But my youngest sister is completely barren, never even able to get pregnant, says Nyerges. Now that you know what the Michigan Department Community of Health did about it, here's the long-lasting effects on people today. According to Detroit Free Press, PBB soaked onto the dinner plates and drinking glasses of 9 out of 10 people in Michigan. And the New York Times estimated that 97% of residents in Michigan all had PBB in their blood 5 years after the incident. So almost everybody in the entire state of Michigan is affected. The Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry said PBBs are stored mainly in your body fat, and they tend to concentrate in breast milk fat, and can enter the bodies of children through breastfeeding. They also said PBBs can stay in your body for many years. They also tested on laboratory animals and fed them PBBs. The animals experienced weight loss, skin disorders, and nervous system effects, and their livers, kidneys, and thyroid glands and immune systems were seriously injured. Like I said earlier, it hasn't been proven that it causes cancer, but it does lead to higher cancer rates. Although the full effect of the contamination has yet to be determined, there have been reports of damaged nervous systems, livers, and immune systems in farm residents. The PBB crisis in St. Louis is a huge agricultural disaster that will forever impact the state of Michigan. First, the cattle feed and the PBB got mixed up and shipped out. Next, over 500 farms got quarantined and an enormous amount of cattle were killed. Then they ran tests on people who had PBB in their body and found many health effects. PBB can stay in your body for many years, which leads to higher cancer rates. This agricultural disaster will always be remembered as the worst in Michigan's history.